All right, awesome. Welcome. So we're just going to dive right into this next session. We've got two top names in the industry. Very thankful to have Robert Scoble come back for a breakout session. So we're going to have him speaking, as well as co-founder of NetApp, Dave Hitz, is joining us as well. So with no further ado, please a big round of applause for both of these guys.
What's going on? He actually knows what he's talking about, so that's why he's here, and I'm here for the entertainment.
So here's our goal. We got a presentation this morning that I thought was fun, and because I knew I was going to be on stage with this man, I read his book this weekend and learned all about AR and VR and MR and
AI.
XR and extended and AI. The thing that I thought it would be fun for us to try and do is you're looking at this stuff, which is all futuristic and like, yeah, someday, whatever. His goal is to convince you, don't pay attention to this at your peril. It's real and it's coming sooner. And if you don't do it right, it could be your career in trouble. And so how do we get from what personally people ought to do to what companies ought to do? And there's a role for you in this, right? Because you're the IT visionary leader, tech people. So personal, what the company need, what you need to do, what companies ought to be thinking about, and then finally, there are some IT back-end implications. You know, gigabytes, and where should data live, and clouds, and latency, and that kind of stuff. So let's start with the personal. You had some tips for people of how you wanted them to get started getting their heads around this. Like, what's your advice?
Watch my Facebook feed. Seriously, I have thousands of things coming to me, and I'm using the AI of Facebook to filter it down, and I keep sharing out. Anytime I see a business doing something with mixed reality or announce something, like Google just announced a few minutes ago something else that I haven't even caught up on, but as soon as I'm off stage, I'm going to go read about that and put it up on my Facebook feed. That will help you see this world
So get
coming.
that correlating.
And let's read some of the books and maybe even go see, maybe even see some of the, go see a play called Sleep No More in New York. A lot of people in the VR industry say that was really informative, because it shows that even plays are going to change in this new world where the action is going to be all around you. And now that we're getting 360 cameras and immersive media like this, you have to start thinking that way. You can't just think about a stage up like we're on a stage. In the future, we might be in the middle and everybody's around.
Some advice that you gave, we were chatting on the phone, and you said, I've got 3 things I think everybody ought to do. And number 1 was read Ready Player One. Show of hands. How many people here have read Ready Player One?
No.
Did you learn anything about VR from it?
Yeah. Tell me what you learned. Whoever just said that. But no, what did you learn? What stuck in your head from the book?
The whole idea of using it for school. I think
just keep talking. He'll turn it on.
Hello? There we go.
Just keep talking.
I think the concept where they hit very early on about using it for school and getting kids in at an early age and getting them thinking that way, it kind of ties to the Minecraft but for me, I go, oh, that seems very natural and normal.
That was actually something that really stood out for me as well. The way they used VR in the book, everybody starts out at home. They don't go to school, and they put on the VR goggles and they put on the VR gloves, and then they go to school. And they're walking down the hallway in VR, and they're walking into the classroom in VR, and they're sitting in desks in VR. And then in the school, the teachers take them on a VR journey to the pyramids or wherever. So picture this, they're in VR, and then they go into VR in VR. And then they're in VR, and they want to see the notes they had back in school. And in VR, they pop up the screen they had on their desk in the VR school, and they're looking like it. You can just do crazy stuff.
That's why we call it mixed reality, right? Milgram came up with the academic definition, which you might go and read if you are into that. But mixed reality means that. Soon I'm not going to be able to tell the difference between you standing here on the stage or you in Hawaii in front of a camera or in a volumetric camera being displayed here on
We're going to
stage,
demo
right?
the difference between VR and mixed reality. So notice, I can't see out through the other side of this.
Yeah,
I'm in virtual reality.
yeah.
His are clear. He can see out through
I can still
it.
see you.
But it's substituting all of your faces with pretty people. So he's having a whole different experience than I am. That's mixed reality.
No, it's Snapchat, man. He's a lion. He's a barfing rainbow dude. And
So that was advice number 1. Advice number 2, you said everybody should watch a couple Black Mirror episodes. Why Black Mirror?
because it accurately portrays what's possible in this next world coming. Now, it only shows you mostly the dark side of this stuff, where this stuff could go wrong. And I think that's important for our industry to think about too, to make sure that we go down the right path and not the wrong path. These things are very addictive. Pfizer calls these a drug. They already are doing research on ADHD, Alzheimer's, and a few other things, autism.
Things that can cure.
Depression, pain. At the University of Washington, VR already is found in some situations to be more effective on pain management than morphine. So this is a
So you
drug.
put someone in a VR world and start doing really painful stuff to them. And they're in a different world, so they don't notice.
Yeah. The study was done with burn victims, so think about having a burn on your body and how much pain that causes you. And it's way more effective than morphine in the studies that they've been doing. I met an eye doctor down in South Africa, Cheryl Lee Calder, and she hacks people's brains with the use of light on a monitor.
See, but they don't all get to go to Africa. That's for later. Right now, I'm trying to get the stuff, just everybody get. So here's my personal experience. My brother bought one of those VR video games, and I went there for 2 afternoons and played for 4 hours each. And so, I'm now the expert at the executive staff where I work. And then I'm coming here and he's like, oh yes, well the time I went to South Africa and they did the brain hacking on my ocular system, I'm like, God damn it, now I'm not the expert anymore at all. But so there is stuff you can do, right?
Have you watched a murder in VR?
No.
I have. It was a Hitchcock murder, but it was still, I was in the shower while the murder was going down. I was able to watch the blood go down the drain.
So I was all proud of my
entertainment's
4
about to really
hours,
change.
all proud of my 4 hours of in VR, and he was like, no, until you've spent 50 hours in the HTC Vive, you haven't started to adjust to what VR can do to you. So advice number 3, number 1, read Ready Player One. Number 2, watch Black Mirror. And number 3 was get an HTC Vive and have 25 experiences and live in it over the course of time for 50 hours. Why 50 hours?
It takes time to get over just the coolness of the games and the experiences you're in, and it takes time to find the other things.
You mentioned social experiences.
Well, social is one. At 2 in the morning, I couldn't sleep one morning. I put on the headset and I go into AltSpace VR, and I find a room where there's a whole bunch of people dancing, listening to a cool DJ with videos playing on a huge screen, virtual screen, and shit, yeah, I might as well go dancing, right, in VR. And so I'm in a nightclub in my living room, dancing with other people around the world and talking with them while I'm dancing, just like I would in a real nightclub.
I saw Jaron Lanier, who you've met, right?
Yeah.
He was one of the early pioneers of virtual reality back when you had like a TV monitor attached to your head.
And an SGI box.
Yeah, a
underneath.
supercomputer right next door, right, with the cable. But he was talking about spending time in VR and how it starts to rewire your brain, that there's a different reality. And he said one of the pivotal experiences that he had was the first time he woke up in VR.
Yeah.
So he wore the thing all day and fell asleep with the thing on his head. And when your eyes first wake up in the morning and you're just like not completely conscious, and he didn't describe what LSD VR world he'd set up, but he's got dreadlocks down, it. But he said, and that coming to consciousness with VR around you it's just different, right? So that you start, when you're in it longer, you start to accumulate these experiences that give you personally a sense of what's possible that's different, I think, from if you've just seen him on stage, which is a good start, right? Any other personal stuff?
For me, the reason I was able to see this world before most people is I go around the world and interview CTOs and executives, and I visited Metaio in 2011, a company in Germany that does augmented reality. They built augmented reality boxes for Lego stores, right? So you could go into the Lego store, pull a box off the shelf, hold it in front of a camera, and the model, the virtualized model of what's in the box would appear on top of the box. It was pretty cool. But they showed me monsters on the sides of skyscrapers in 2011, and then Apple bought them. And another company that I interviewed was Primesense. They make a 3D sensor, and his demos, he had a table with the sensor up here aimed at the table, and it could tell how hard I was pressing the table from 3 feet away. And I believe soon this thing is going to know how hard your heart is beating right now from 3 feet away.
You know, one of the things he said, one of the scariest things was, so here I am with my 3D goggles in Las Vegas looking around, and they can track my pupil size.
Yeah.
And see how I'm reacting to things in Las Vegas that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Like, are you a poker guy or a blackjack guy?
Yeah.
Like what?
Steve Wynn already knows that, by the way, because you put your card in the to the dealer at the table, right?
He was joking
Your
about
loyalty
spouse
card.
alert. Like, oh, look, alert to husband, alert to wife. Like, that's the one that does it.
That's my Black Mirror part of me. Yeah.
And then there's the product placement, right? Whoa, he goes for black hair. Here's the preference by L'Oreal because you're worth it. We're going to be living in this world and stuff's popping. That's the advertise. This is one of the, is that the world you want to live in? An ad blocker?
I don't think the ads are going to be interruptive like a Super Bowl ad. I think you're going to see a Coca-Cola can on a table, and Skrillex is going to dig out of the can, jump on the table, build a sound stage, and then perform for 5 minutes, and then pack it all back and pull it back into his Coke can.
So there's some stuff
do you
you
wanna
can do
watch advertising
personally. Boy, for me, not Skrillex, but they can find something for
Elton
all
John?
of us. Elton John. Sir Roly-Poly. Corporate.
You're going to see the media you want to see, right? And I can't see what you're seeing.
So I'm going to steer us to the corporate thing.
Yeah.
You all work for corporations?
Yeah.
Corporations are people, my friend.
Yeah.
Part of the premise of your book and your talk, corporations who don't look at this stuff are missing a big business opportunity. And every corporation is different. And I have to say, I've been asking for NetApp, like what stuff could we, data we could visualize, or internal operations we could improve, or advertising, or I don't know. For everyone it'll be different. But I want to share one story that I encountered of people using this kind of mass sensor data, mass input of stuff in a domain that I would have never said that this is a place where you could go there. But it was fly fishing. So anybody done the fly fishing thing? One of the fly fishing reel companies is computerizing the reel, and the reel is gathering data about you continuously as you fly fish. So you send it out, bzzz, it knows how far you cast. Then the sinker hits and drops. It knows how deep it went. Imagine the map they can build after 1,000 people have cast and dropped. It knows the water temperature. It can tell if there's nibbles. Yeah. It can feel all of that stuff, and it's uploading it. And what these guys want to transform from is a fly fishing company into being a fishing experience company. We can help you cast farther. We can tell you what lure to use based on the temperature. We know what the temperature is based on this day last year. We know where the fish are biting now. Yeah. Like that. If a fly fishing company can do this, probably you can, whatever your business, right?
Yeah.
You had some other examples of just like, whoa, broaden your aperture.
I think this is why AR is more exciting than VR. VR is really exciting. It's really cool to be in VR and play basketball against your friends who are 5 hours away or whatever, or watch a movie in 360 in there, and, or work on a new 3D model if you're building 3D stuff like a car, right?
But
That's
AR,
why
you think, is even more interesting than VR.
what we're all building is a new data layer on top of the real world. And in fact, let's just start with the real world. We're making a virtual copy of the real world at some resolution. And it's not just mixed reality glasses that are doing this. The CEO of Mercedes says, I'm doing this for the self-driving car. I'm actually, they're mapping out every street up to 30 feet in elevation at 2 centimeter resolution per voxel or volumetric pixel. So there's grids of voxels all over this room, right? Now that's not that high a resolution. It's good enough for a self-driving car. Your glasses are gonna need more resolution. Once we have that copy of the real world, we can lay stuff on top of it. So your fly fishing example, if I go to Yellowstone, I'm gonna wear a glasses and it's gonna show me where all the hot fishing holes are because it knows where people are catching fish in the last 3 days.
Maybe 3D recreate the terrain under the water that I can see.
Yeah.
What I would like a robotic underwater drone showing me images of my lure landing so that I can see through the surface of the water and then the fish coming up and about to bite. I want to see all of that in my virtual glasses. This is going weird places.
By the way, well, we write about this a lot. The next world we're going into is weird. It's weird to see you as SpongeBob up on stage, right? It's a weird world.
Oh, I'm glad I'm the one with SpongeBob as opposed to the other way around.
But here, when I went to Qualcomm, they showed me a drone that can fly around a room, and you can fly it straight at the wall, and it'll stop an inch from the wall because it's building a 3D map of the room as well. So soon we're going to be building this 3D map of the world, and now we can have robots navigating around, both real and artificial robots. I've seen artificial robots coming that look pretty damn interesting and are assistants to you and standing here. In fact, my speaking coach could be standing right here saying, hey, will you start looking at the audience a little bit more?
So I'm curious if anybody has had their brain jogged at all so far about something your company could do different with VR, data, AI.
Is anybody using VR yet?
Anybody thinking this through? I got you already.
This is a VR
so because
here's
the chance. What I'm going to do is quickly invite you up here for a consulting gig with Mr. Scoble to just like brainstorm your idea and maybe tune it a little bit.
By the way,
anybody? I saw a hand going up. Come on up.
Come on up. And then we'll get you too.
Run. I've got a mic for you.
One of the companies, while she's walking up here, in Seattle was building an app for second responders. So let's say there's a big hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake, and I'm a second responder. I go into buildings that are damaged, and I have to map what's wrong. There's a crack in the wall over there, and I put a little tag on there. And then the mayor in the town can just use his HoloLens and see all the tags all over town, right?
So what's your company doing? What were you thinking?
Well, so it's not necessarily what we do. Sorry, I hate this part. But when we were at lunch, I have a team of people where about half are remote, and we thought that it would be a really interesting thing to see happen where you could take like a Zoom room and engage with the augmented reality to be able to actually have coworkers in a room
Bring
with
them
you.
into the room with you and you can look around.
Yeah, so like if you were my coworker, like I could be like, hey, and you could reply and then I would see you.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting because VR gives you something called presence, and that's what we're feeling on stage right now. We feel your presence. And in VR, I see you and feel you next to me, and it really changes how I interact with you if you're in VR versus being on Skype on a 2D screen, right? And now I can throw a Frisbee at you, right? Virtually, and you can catch it. It's nuts what you can do in VR. That's why I tell people you got to start seeing what's possible in VR over the internet today, right? Now, what's funny is that if you guys wait a few more months, the new iPhone's going to
see what just happened because she was brave. All you guys.
And I hate it.
Thank you.
But working together is going to be really different in the future because we're going to have a 3D model of the car we're designing. You're going to call in from Chicago or somewhere else, and I'm going to call in from the West Coast, and we're going to see each other in VR, see our hands, see our where we're aiming, looking at. So I know if you're paying attention to the task at hand, right? That's very different than Skype, where I don't
There's something
feel
about
that.
the eye contact. Do people know why we have whites of our eyes? Has anybody heard this? Most animals, there's no whites in their eyes. And the reasons that humans have whites in their eyes, we have evolved to watch where other people are looking. And because of the whites, you can see where I'm looking. No other animal can do that thing where the kid can look at what mom's looking at and track what mom. And now that the computer can do that, the computer can join us as humans and see where we're looking, right? I mean, that is one of the most human things is eye gaze tracking, which is a core component of the next generation of VR, of what's coming, yeah. Any other stories of interesting things you've seen corporations do?
Oh, man.
What about internal operations? I mean, that's one that's not even facing the customer, but just stuff people are doing.
They're starting to. The example I give from a guy who's here at Trace3, they're starting to build VR systems to allow you to walk around networks, walk around traffic flows, and walk around your business, walk around your Looker data, right? If you're using Looker or a BI tool, you can talk to it and see a chart on the table in front of you and walk around the table.
You had an example of putting together jet planes.
Boeing has hundreds of these HoloLenses to see the wiring, because inside the wings is thousands of wires, right? Think about having to put together the wiring harnesses inside a plane, and if you make a mistake, people die, right?
Well, and you mentioned this, speaking of people die, I mean, doctors being able to have information, their hands are busy and bloody, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be flipping through, plus that's not confidence inspiring.
No,
so you want to be a doctor.
It actually, it's worse than that. I was on stage with a surgeon who's using AR technologies to teach students. He says if you touch something in an operating room, it costs $1,500 because now you have to re-scrub your hands to get back to sterile condition. So he's trying to build systems that, one, you don't have to touch anything. Two, we're training the AI to do the job, right? If you get LASIK now, it's probably AI that's doing the actual operation on your eye because it can see the surface of your eye. I just had my retina imaged in 3D, and it can see behind the original surface of the cones and rods that are in my eye to the muscles underneath. It's crazy what you can do now with a sensor. And we're training the AI, and the AI is also training us and helping us get better at surgery, so we can practice over and over a new technique.
On a fake heart, a virtual heart.
Yeah.
So these are some of the kinds of things that a company can do, and I think people do need to cast a pretty broad net of it doesn't have to be directly related to your business. I mean, some of the, you mentioned the PGA, and they're going in and trying to capture a lot more data and make that data be a separate thing. The NFL is another example. The NFL is trying to figure out if we wanted to give people a much more interesting virtual experience, what data would we need to collect? Yeah. And so they're putting in the football uniforms, they're putting sensors. We can get the heart rate, we can get on helmet cams, we can give you the view from whichever player you'd like to be that player's view. Foot strike, how hard are they pushing? Maybe you can tell from that how fast they're running, see all of, but imagine you're at a football game and you press the button and you can be the quarterback.
They're rewriting the rules with AI because if you get hurt in a certain play, they have the AI watch that play and see if there's a pattern that they can recommend to change the rules to keep that injury from happening to other people. Right?
So here's an example that I had come across. We do business, NetApp from the data management perspective, we do business with some sports teams. And one of the things baseball teams in particular are starting to do, if you're a left-handed batter that's about to be playing this particular team that has these three pitchers, they have done high-speed photographs from behind the plate of the last 100 times that pitcher has pitched to a left-handed player. And so you can say, well, I'd like to see that montage and look at those balls coming. And you said you've actually talked to some of those guys. They're now putting that into a VR experience. So you can practice against virtually the opposing team before you go on the field, right? That is a whole different level up of what I think we normally think
No,
of.
back to Cheryl Lee Calder, this eye doctor in South Africa. She's hacking athletes' brains. She works with professional athletes. And she found a way to hack their brain to make their perception system better. The owner of the South African cycling team told me that his worst rider in terms of falls per race now is the best because he played her app for 10 minutes a day for 6 months. And she exercises your perception system. It makes it better.
Practice.
This is why Pfizer calls this stuff a drug, because we're able to hack our brains and do new things.
So I wrote notes of my questions. Fly fishing.
We're heading toward a data overlay world. We call it immersive computing, or you called it, Shell calls it pervasive computing.
I wanted to
ubiquitous
poke
computing.
at something. Yeah, because there's a couple different terms that are going on at the Google conference that's been going on, starting Monday?
Started yesterday, 2 days ago.
And one of the terms that they use is ambient computing. And if you listen to what ambient computing is, it's almost the opposite of what Scoble and Shell are talking about. Ambient computing is just, there's computing all around, but you don't even notice it. But you ask a question, Alexa, what year was Raquel Welch born? And boom, the answer comes up. And so there's no visual interface, there's nothing blocking your vision, it's just floating around. And my immediate reaction was, this guy's completely
What year
wrong.
was Raquel Welch born?
This guy's completely...
Welch was born on September 5th, 1940.
That's Google's new assistant. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, that was a real example. I chose that because I knew it knew the answer. So is ambient computing the opposite of what you're describing, and does it mean you're completely wrong?
No, I think what this is a visual view on top of the ambient computing. Yes, we're going to have sensors in the room taking care of heat, taking care of things, listening to us. Hey, Alexa, all the stuff we're doing with Amazon Echo at home. But soon we're going to see all sorts of visual stuff laid on top of the world based on our input, right? If we're looking for a nightclub here in Las Vegas, we're soon going to be able to say, hey, Siri, what's the hottest nightclub right now? And boom, 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 are going to appear 5 pictures, live videos. I'm not even thinking in the future properly, right? Live videos, maybe volumetric videos, so you can actually see the dance floor, and it'll have all the sensor readings off of the phone. So if everybody's dancing and everybody's happy, it's going to know the sentiment. It's going to know how many people are dancing. It's going to know the gender makeup. It's going to know age range. All sorts of stuff, right?
So we were chatting at lunch, and part of what Robert convinced me is, on the one hand, that you could argue that it's completely different, but at the same time, it's senses you use in your daily life, right? It's talking, it's listening, it's okay, looking versus listening, but and the other thing is it's backed by powerful AI, right? I mean, when you're having these virtual physical experiences, there's something constructing it. There's something remapping your face or changing the world around. It's the thing that's worth seeing. Often there's a powerful, AI or machine learning, that new back-end style of analytics. And so in that sense, do you define these transitions? I love the way you define the transitions by the input model. I've heard a lot of different ways of, mainframe, mini, micro, but doing it by, do I type? Do I point and click? Do I touch? Or do I look? Right? But each of those comes with
grab.
With an assumed back-end technology of is it a big computer in another room? Is it a little computer I can fit on my desk? Is it one so small I can carry? Or is it ambient? It's
this
just
is why
around me.
humans have a hard time with the future. I remember arguing with people about email when email started coming along, and I said, hey, we should convert our office to email. And people argued with me, oh no, paper's good enough. We loved sending paper memos. It makes a physical copy, and I can read the thing. I can't read the screen. Back then we only had 640 by 480 monitors, stuff like that.
So let's bring this into the IT world.
And what's going on is this is going to get smaller and a lot cheaper soon, in the next 3 years, right?
No, when do you think those glasses you showed will be out?
Next year. I'm going to have a pair next year.
Yeah, but I meant...
I don't care about all the rest of the people here. I'm wearing a pair next year. If you don't want to wear a pair, I'm going to have information screens all over. I'm going to have my Amazon screens here, my
I just
Facebook
meant
here.
they could get 'em, not that they
CNN's running
choose-
over here.
not that they choose
My
to. I know
speech coach is going to be here.
They'll give you the early one.
I mean, think about Mark Zuckerberg, right? He has a professional athletic coach that runs with him every morning. He can afford that. I can't. So I'm going to have a virtualized coach running next to me. Nike just demonstrated this on a track. They have a track where you run, and it shows a runner, a coach running next to you, and you have to keep up with the coach. This is going to be in your glasses soon, right?
Oh man, I don't want those glasses now. So
VR
IT.
is a exercise, by
I'm
the
gonna
way.
try and switch this to IT. How many people here are IT professionals?
But these people are all building certain systems for human beings, right?
No, well, there's that. You've got
They run Nike,
you've got
or they
the
run an
personal,
entertainment company,
you've
or
got
they
the
run a
corporate, and
tractor
then
company.
suppose you're successful at getting your head around this new stuff, and suppose you're successful in your organization of influencing people that this stuff might matter, right? Then you know who they're going to turn to build it.
You.
Here's a stat that I recently received. A self-driving car, each self-driving car generates 4 petabytes of data a day.
I met a guy out during lunch who says he has a box coming out that has 9 petabytes in a shoebox.
Okay, so let's call that 2 days.
It's over.
So let me just ask,
It was over 10 years ago when Scott McNeely said that to you. You didn't believe him then. It's really going to be over soon. But we are going to come up with new social structures, because if you wear a pair of glasses like this in a restroom, I don't want you to be capturing me in 3D. So the glasses have to see the men's room sign when I walk in through the geofence of that door and turn off all of its capturing capabilities, and it's going to not cause consequences. Of course, the NSA gets to watch whatever it wants to watch, but we're talking about consequences for us, right?
so here's what I've decided. I am comfortable with radical transparency. I think privacy as we know it is a fairly recent invention. So if you think back to village life, the walls were thin in village life, and everybody was looking out on the street, and everybody knew who was who, and if little Johnny is bad, little Sammy's mom can see little Johnny and tell. There was no such thing as privacy. You think you're sneaking into some other hut in the village? Like, no, everyone knows you're there. So to me, in some ways, we're returning to a space that's much like humans mostly evolved in. It's not the privacy part that bugs me. What bugs me is that there's people looking at me and I can't look back at them.
Yeah.
Right? If they're going to have cameras in my house looking at my stuff, I want cameras in the White House looking at their stuff.
I wore
Right? I want to see in that. To me, the problem is not privacy versus not privacy. The problem is a fundamental imbalance. That's my personal view on it. But in some ways, that's almost easier to solve. Yeah. If everybody in this room has glasses, there's no hiding, right? But we just need to sneak a few more glasses around.
That's good insight. I wore Google Glass for a year, and people kept blaming the camera for all sorts of social problems. It has nothing to do with the camera. I was at Coachella, big music festival, 10,000 people. Everybody's recording on their iPhone and Android phones, right? And 2 guys in front of me started walking away from me, and one guy said, I got to get away from the Google Glass guys. I wasn't wearing it. It was 2 guys behind me. I grabbed them and said, what the heck, are you worried about this? Why does this freak you out? It's not the recording, because everybody has a phone in the air recording. And it turned out that it was this social problem, this information asymmetry, and the fact that there was a screen in between us. Because we did evolve to look into each other's eyes to see if you're trustworthy or interesting or paying attention to me or whatever.
Well, one of the things that I think is interesting is the data piece. One of the claims that I've heard is we need to go to all of the data is pushed all the way out to the edge of everything. Because if you want to like put up an ad as you walk down the grocery store aisle, you need to push all of that compute out to the edge. And I have to say, there's a piece of that I think is bullshit. I mean, my phone already, I can push a button and the internet responds with data, and that's going to some data center somewhere, but it's sure not all in my phone, and that's plenty fast enough, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff I go, I don't believe everything needs to be in the compute at the edge of everywhere. I think that's just wrong. And then you pointed out self-driving cars might be different.
Yes, you don't need all the compute locally, but if a kid runs in front of the car better handle that situation in a really low latency way, right? So there has to be enough data and enough compute on the car to handle that. Go back to our fishing rod example. If I show up to Yellowstone and it takes 3 seconds for all the data to get overlaid on top of the Yellowstone River, it doesn't bother me. If I'm playing Frisbee, though, with you, and the Frisbee hangs here for 3 seconds, that's going to be really a pain in the ass, right? And we're not going to like that.
So when you think about infrastructure design and data center design, I think a couple of questions you'll start to ask are, where does the data need to be? Where do I need to get it to? Should it be in the cloud? Should it be on-prem? Is it fine to be once in the cloud for the entire world? Because it's not that many milliseconds around the entire world. Or is it Frisbee, and it better be metro close?
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to need to repeat this data all over the place. And so how do you think about that? And some of these latency numbers, I mean, if you're doing Frisbee, you're probably talking 20 to 50 milliseconds of tracking. That's kind of in the human perception. If you're talking grocery store aisle, well, you know, I'm approaching, even if it takes a second, that'll be just fine, right? So I think there will be a lot of these kinds of issues of designing your data strategy and your data architecture to get the data to where it needs to be for the compute to be where it needs to be to connect up.
One thing that's coming along with mixed reality and self-driving cars is 5G. And 5G gives us 35 gigabits per second down to our glasses or our phones. And it gives us 2 millisecond latency to the cell tower. And it gives us, I forget the number, but it's a huge number more Internet of Things devices hooked up per cell tower. But the problem is the cell tower needs to be closer to you. It needs to be less than 1.5 kilometers away from you. Current LTE towers can be 15 kilometers away from you, right? In Half Moon Bay, we have 1 tower for the entire community, right?
That was one of my big takeaways from your book. You know, you can say, oh, look, it's virtual reality, that's cool, and everybody's like, I don't know if I get it. There's so many technologies coming together and so many people pushing on them, including people like Apple and Google and Amazon who make stuff happen. It's the sensors, it's the images, it's the maps of the whole world, it's the ambient computing and ability to understand my voice and the vision. It's all of this stuff. So if there's one takeaway, I think that both of us would like you to take away from this. This stuff is real now, bits of it. It's coming fast, and it's worth understanding and being aware of. And there's a few tips you can do to do that, right? But it's just like wake up call on this stuff being not just a game for kids, but being business relevant more broadly.
It's changing even products, right? This is a cheap camera from China, but if you notice, when I shake the camera, it doesn't move. It's really good at image stabilization. And the engineer who built it explained, I'm taking the gyroscope data, it's the stream of numbers up to the camera, and then the camera is reconfiguring the ball of pixels around you in real time to study the image.
We now have all of your pixels, just so you know.
Yeah.
Voxels. Well, I just want to say thank you for coming. I enjoyed getting a chance to talk with this man I've heard of for years and never met till today, and I really appreciate you spending your time with us.
It's an honor. Thank you. Thank you.